Okay, so this session is session number 2 for the designing and publishing of the APIs. Okay, so as a recap, in the previous session, we covered what is MuleSoft, okay, and what are the APIs, what are the REST APIs, what are Mule events, and how do they behave, how the different components of the Mule events behave when they cross the transport barrier. Hope you have gone through the session 1 recording, okay. So in this session, we will cover how to design and publish the APIs. So this is the agenda for today's session. First, we'll understand what is RAML, and then we'll understand and show you how do we design an API specification using RAML, and then we'll show you a use case where we will design and publish the API to Exchange, Anypoint Exchange. Okay. This will be followed by a Q&A session, and and towards the end of this session, we'll provide you an assignment as well, which you need to complete before the our next session will be, which will be beginning on next Saturday. Okay, so what is RAML? So RAML stands for RESTful API Modeling Language. Okay, so why it is called a modeling language? Because it provides a standardized and structured way to design the APIs. Okay, so basically we use a RAML for the designing the API specifications, to be more precise. So it is written in a YAML format. YAML stands for yet another markup language. Okay, it's a very user-friendly language. It is both human and machine readable. Okay, we just need to write the code and it will automatically create a basic structure of the API. Okay, I would strongly encourage you to go to raml.org for the documentation. Okay, and to know more about the RAML, why it is used, and what are its different components. So let me just quickly go to raml.org. So I am at raml.org. So under developers, if you go to tutorials, so here is one, so like RAML 100 tutorial, which covers the basics of RAML. Okay, so I would request you to go through it. Okay, and once you're covered with the basics concepts of RAML, then you go to the advanced tutorial, which is RAML 200 tutorial. Okay, so the links to both these tutorials I have mentioned in my presentation. Okay, so let's move forward. Okay, so as I told, like, so RAML is basically used to design the APIs. Okay, so but why we need to design the APIs, or what exactly we mean by designing APIs? Designing APIs means you are building a blueprint. Okay, and before actually developing the API, you're building a blueprint how the API would behave, what kind of data it will accept, what kind of data it will respond. You are building actually a blueprint before actually developing an API. Designing an API and building or developing an API are both two separate things. Okay, so designing an API, you're just building a blueprint, but actual implementation takes place when you do actual development of the API. Okay, so let's consider an analogy. Okay, so suppose you are building your house. Okay, so first you build a blueprint. So architect comes in and builds a blueprint for it, right? So where would be your bedrooms, where will bathroom or dining room, kitchen, all the locations are finalized over here. What would be their dimensions? Okay, what will be the flooring plan? Everything is sorted out before the actual development of the house begins. Okay, so why do we do that, right? The simple answer is that, like, okay, when we develop the house, right, so there are no I would say there's a clarity at that point of time what we're actually going to build. Okay, so once we have the blueprint ready, we know what we need to build and where we need to build, what are the dimensions of the house, of the different components like bedroom, living room, kitchen room, and according to that we build the house. So in a similar way, API design lays the foundation on which the API development will be done. Okay, so then that API design is done using the RAML. Okay, so it's RAML is not the only language in which the API design can be done. There is another language also which is called OAS, Open API Specifications, but MuleSoft recommends using the RAML basically. So generally for the MuleSoft developing the REST APIs in MuleSoft, we use RAML. Okay, so what are different components in RAML? Okay, so I will just go through them briefly. Okay, and you can read them about them in detail through the RAML tutorial links which I mentioned in the previous slides. Okay, so RAML helps you, as I told, RAML helps you to define the structure of the API. So what will how do we define the structure? So in the RAML we have resources. So resources represent a unique identity or endpoint for an API. Okay, suppose we have a user resource which can handle the user related operations. To show you quickly, if I go over here, you see raml.org, like here it is called the base URI, and this is the resource. Developers is the resource. Okay, and then raml 200 tutorial is the URI parameter. So developers is the resource which will for this URL. Okay, so it will be a unique identity or unique endpoint for an API. And then what are the different operations which we can perform on these resources? Those are defined using the methods. So we have some of the commonly used methods include get, post, put, or delete. So with the help of get method, we can query the information. Suppose we need to query the user details. Then in that case, we use the get method. For post, we are used to create a new user. Okay, so creating the new entity. Put, we are updating the user information. And delete, suppose we need to delete a particular user or a set of users. Okay, so these are quite a few of the commonly used methods. Then in the RAML, we define what is the request and response for each method, what kind of input each method would accept, and what kind of response it would send. Let's take an example for delete method. So delete method, suppose it will accept a user ID. Okay, so we will pass a user ID, and then delete would delete and delete method would perform the delete operation in the backend for that corresponding user ID and returns a response saying that the user has been deleted successfully. Okay, so in this way we define the request and responses. Similar to that, let's take an example for get. So get, we pass on the query parameter or the URI parameters. So these things like for the get method, let me just show you quickly one real case. So if I go to youtube.com, okay, and I want to retrieve suppose my channel, like your integration buddy. Okay, just search it. So if you see how this URL is constructed, so I received the response here. Okay, and you see the request which is constructed over here is like this. So youtube.com will constitute the base URI, results would be your resource, and then after question mark it means it starts a query parameter. So query parameter is search underscore query, and your integration body is being searched over here. Okay, so the value of the query parameter search underscore query is your plus integration plus body. Okay, so this is how this get call is getting constructed using the query parameter. And then there are URI parameters also. Okay, so if I open the Anypoint platform, so here you see that anypoint.mulesoft.com is a base URI, and here it is exchange is our resource, and applications represent the URI param here. Okay, So to in the get call, we can either use a query params or URI params we can use, and then we can have the body as well. And for like, let's take an example for the post call, we send a body. Okay, we request, okay, what are the details of the users that we need to add in the database, so that will constitute the body of the request. Okay, so all these things we define in the RAML. Then the last things we have the data types and traits. So data types, as the name signifies, it allows us to like define the structure and the format of request and response payloads. What kind of data types are being accepted for the different request and response payloads that we define in the data types. Then we have traits. So traits, like they are a way to define the reusable set of features. Okay, so we just suppose as a part of trait we define a query parameter, and then that query parameter can be reused across various methods or resources. We don't need to define that query map parameter again and again. I'll show you in the coming slide how it looks like. Okay, so let's take an example for this RAML, okay, which is describing a music API. Okay, so here we have the RAML 1.0. So RAML comes in two versions. One is RAML 0.8, and now it is RAML 1.0, which is the latest version. So we generally go with RAML 1.0. Okay, the title is music API and version is V1. So here, if you see the types, so it defines a data type called song. Okay, and what is song? Song is a like the type of object, and in the properties we have ID, title, artist, and duration, and these are the different data types. Okay, so we have data type song, and under that we define the various properties and their data types. So it will have an ID of the song, title of the song, the artist who sang the song, and what is the duration of the song. Okay, then I told about traits, right? So in traits, we have this search trait, which is having a query parameter. Okay, and the query parameter here we accepting as a type as string. So we in the search trait, we are having a query parameter called query, in which we will be accepting only the strings. Okay, so here the search trait, if you see over here in the get method, okay, so before get method we have the resource. So songs, under songs resource we have the get method. So get method we have the trait mentioned over here. So you see it's getting reused. So instead of defining a query parameter again here, sorry, we just reused this trait here. That's it. So the get method will automatically have this query parameter over here by referring this trait here. Okay, we defined the trait here and referred it in the get method. And then again, we are defining another query parameter called limit, which will be of type as integer. So it will limit the how many songs which we need to retrieve from the database. So the default value for this limit would be 10. Then, as I told, like there are responses also, request and response body. So in the responses, we're defining a body of type application JSON, and these are the examples how the response from the get call would look like. Okay, so what we have done here, like basically we have constructed a RAML specification which describes a music API. Okay, we have defined the data types here, we have defined the trait, we defined the resource. Under resource we have the get method. Under get method we have two query params. One query parameter params is coming from the trait, one we are defining over here, and then we have the response format from the get method. So whenever we make a call to the get method, we would expect a response in this format. Okay, so let me just show you how this API specification looks like in the design center. Okay. So I'm in the Anypoint platform. Okay, so I go to design center. Okay, so API design, so we just click on create API specification. So I'll just write down music API. So how do you want to draft API specs? You can use either you can design on your own, or you can, it has a visual interface also where which can guide you to design the RAML specs. So here I'm I've decided to like I will design it on my own. You see over here we have different specification languages in which you can design the specs: RAML 1.0, RAML 0.8, and then you have the open API specifications: OAS 2.0, 3.0. Okay, so we go ahead with RAML 1.0. Yeah, it's taking a bit of time. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so I just pasted the API specs over here. Okay, whatever I showed you in that slide. So now you will see on this right hand side we have the API endpoint called get. So just click over here and you see over here like the MuleSoft provides a mocking service. Since we require a base URL to hit this request, so MuleSoft has already provided it via mocking service. So if I open this, if I copy this request URL, you see over here, until this point, the MuleSoft has provided the base URI. Okay, and after this is a songs resource. Okay, and then after this we have the limit query parameter, which was defaulted as 10, and then a query parameter which we got from the trait. Okay, so this is the mocking service provided by MuleSoft. So we have the required fields of limit and the queries. Okay, we are just write down Bohemia. Okay, and just was send request. Okay, you see, so we got a 200 okay response, and we got this response which we defined in the body of this API. Okay, so I hope you are aware of the different responses. HTTP responses like 200 means okay. Okay, so no issues in returning the response, and 201 means the resource was created successfully. Then there are different other responses also, like 400, which generally stands for bad data request. 404 is there for the resource not found, and then 500 is also there, which 5xx is there, which represents server side error. Okay, so yeah, so that's pretty much I wanted to cover for the basics of the RAML and designing the API specs. So the other question which comes in our mind is that where does this designing of the specs comes in the API lifecycle? Okay, so this is a
Yes, sorry to interrupt. I think
yeah, Venkatesh.
Ketan has some questions. He has raised his hand. Yeah, Ketan?
To that slide. Can you go back to that slide where you're showing RAML? Okay, so in the we have created a object, right? A song, a type.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and then we created a trait. So if in this our right hand side, we refer the trait in this get operation. So where this song type is being referred, how that is being referred? Miss, in the if you see the response, the example, it pretty much it's like the object we defined, ID, title, artist, duration, but how it is referred, the song type.
Yeah, so we have not referred the response. Okay, so in the
Okay,
example we have directly referred the properties over here, but we have not referred the song object over here. But that can also be done, so that will be a proper way of doing it. Instead of doing it in this way, the song can be referred in this response, the
So,
song object.
When we
mhm,
have this demonstration, right?
mhm.
After we just covered it, I'll show you that how it will
Okay.
run.
Okay,
Yep. Okay.
thank you.
Yep. No worries. But yes, you are correct. Like we should have referred the song over here, but yeah, instead we just for the demonstrative purposes we just referred the properties directly here. Okay.
Okay,
So
okay,
once Venkatesh covers the demo, so he will demonstrate how to use the object over here. Okay.
okay, sure, thank you.
Yep. No worries. So now where does this design comes into picture? Okay. So here we have then the API lifecycle, which is constituting of three phases, mainly design phase, implementation phase, and the management phase. Okay, so in the design phase, we just start with the design and simulate, where we gather the business requirements, and according to that, we design our API specs. We build the resources, methods, okay, response and the request data formats, and then we get the feedback from the developers, like whether it needs any more modifications or not. And then in the validate stage, we incorporate the feedback received. So in this way, our API specs are finalized over here. And the next stage is the implementation stage, where we actually do the API development using the Anypoint Studio. Okay, and then we test it as well, so we can use our of the MUnit framework, which is provided by MuleSoft, to testing the API, the API which was developed. And then we finally have the management phase, where we secure our APIs using the various secure policies. Okay, so and then we deploy it using the various platform deployment options provided by MuleSoft, right, like Cloud Hub or on-premises deployment. And then we have monitoring also. So in the monitoring, like we can monitor the API usage analytics. Okay, and through the endpoint monitoring, we can monitor different aspects of the API metrics. And then we can troubleshoot and if any issues with the APIs. Okay, so this is the complete API lifecycle. So in this session, we covered on the design phase. Okay, so now I'll hand over to Venkatesh. Okay, so he will show you a use case demo. Okay, so he will show you a particular use case, and based on that, I will provide you an assignment for the next session, for this session. Yeah, over to you, Venkatesh. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, Vikas. Thanks. Sharing my screen. Let me know once you can see. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So let's start from here only. As Vikas said, right, we will be having this different API life cycle management stage, right? Starting from design till production management, right? So this everything, all the steps, whatever you are saying here, right, end to end would be covered in Anypoint platform from the MuleSoft side. Okay, so we have the tool set where we can design, as Vikas showed, right? We have designed the RAML. We have tool set where we can collect the feedback, exchange. With the mock response, we can simulate and validate that particular thing. With Anypoint Studio and Anypoint Code Builder, we can build our application. With automated unit test cases, we can do a unit testing. Then we can securely deploy our application on the environment. Once it's deployed, we could do monitoring with Anypoint monitoring. We could use visualizer, all other capabilities functional monitoring. We can use Anypoint analytics to visualize the logs. We can use Anypoint management, Anypoint manager to manage all our APIs, right? So everything is available in the MuleSoft. Okay, we don't have to go to any other external tool for that. So throughout this session, right, we'll see how each and every step we are going to use while implementing our use case. Okay, so now let's jump. So what I'm going to cover, right, with this use case, I'll quickly show you. First, we'll talk about the use case, what use case we are going to build, and that use case we are going to follow throughout this sessions. Okay, and assignment would be on this use case only. Then the RAML, as Vikas showed, right? We'll see how we can create a RAML specification with UI. I'll cover one of the use case. I'll cover how we can publish that one. Implementation, a quick implementation part and quick deployment part. Okay. So now let's jump on the use case part. Okay. So before going to actual use case, we'll see how our architecture will look like on very high level. Okay, so basically this blue area, what you are seeing, right, experience and system layer. If you remember, right, in previous session, Vikas explained about the API-led activity. So basically here we are going to deal with two system layer and one experience layer. So as we have explained in the previous session, right? So system layer is the abstraction on top of our backend. Okay, so it's kind of a wrapper of our backend, right? So we'll be having a dedicated system layer for dedicated backend. Okay, so as you can see, the second system layer is connected to database. Okay, and then we have an object store. So in MuleSoft, we have a concept called as object store. it's a temporary storage. Okay, it's not recommended used for a long-term storage. Okay, if we need some kind of a temporary storage which is small in size, okay, then only we can make a use of a object store, like caching the token, right? We have a JWT token when we call a backend, right? Sometimes we need to cache a token. So in that scenario, we could use an object store, but we cannot replace object store as a database. Okay, so database has very wide use cases. Object store is not meant for that. Okay, it's just for a temporary use case. So just for simplicity, right? For our first use cases, we are going to go with the first system layer. And once we are more comfortable in the mules of implementation part, then we'll move to develop the second system layer. Okay. So basically external world will make a call to experience layer, and from experience layer will make an appropriate call to either first system layer or second system layer, and second will connect to database, and the first system layer will include object store within that application only. So this is high level structure. Okay. Now let's discuss our use case. So here use case would be a customer management API. Okay. So here we will be having create customer, then we'll be having get customer, get all customer, get customer by ID. We could update the customer, we could delete the customer. Okay. So basically we are going to cover this customer management use case with all CRUD operations. Okay. So in the first use case, we will be going to create a post API, post customer API. So as Vikas mentioned earlier, right? So this post is our method operations. So we are planning to create a customer. That's why we went with the post here. Then we have a resources customer. Okay. So if we see this particular URL, right, mules of blocks, here we can see the recommended use for each method. Okay, so post is basically used for creating a data, get is retrieving data, patch, put and delete. Okay, so except patch, we will be covering all these methods in our use case. Okay, so this is the first use case. We'll make a call to experience layer. From experience layer, the call will make to system layer, and system layer will create a data in the object store. Okay, and will return 201 success response back to the consumer from experience layer. So in today's session, we will focus on the experience layers only. Okay, in next session, we'll discuss more about how we connect from experience to system layer and how we can implement the objects or related stuff in the system layer. That would be discussed in detail in next session. Okay, so now this is the plan for today's session. Okay, so along with the post, I'll be also covering the get call. Okay, so again, it's a get customer call will made to experience layer and system. Okay, so similarly, we have other use cases, so that we'll discuss when we will discuss about the assignment part. Okay, so this is the overall use case which we are planning to implement. Okay, so now before let's jump to the design center. Okay, and this is also another good block where it shows the details about the relevance of each and every HTTP status code. Okay, what is the purpose of the status code, in which scenario we use what type kind of a status code. Okay, so you can go through this also. So mostly will be in our use case, mostly will be using 201 for post, and for other use case other methods will going with the 200. Okay, success response. Okay, so let's create a API. Okay, I'll just name that API as a X customer API, and instead of selecting the first option, right, the inline one, I'll just go with the guide me through it. Okay, so I'll just explain you how it works also, and the get one will develop in the inline mode. So once you select the guide me through it, create API, it will give a UI where you can just select the options and build your RAML specification. Okay, so once UI is loaded, you would see we have a different set of options. Like here, what would be the title look like? Okay, so this is basically our API summary. So what would be the title? So the title would be X customer API. So just observe this right hand side also, right? So as soon as I have entering details here, my right hand side is getting updated automatically. So what is the version of our API? It's a V1, right? In the protocol, I want the protocol HTTP, HTTPS, whatever you want, you can select. Okay, you can select a media type at the API level, in which format or in which format you need your request, and this one that you can give it at the API level. But we go with the resources level media type. Is there any base URI you want, like API? So API would be my base URI. Okay, and then any description, right? Like customer management API. Okay, so this is what we have filled in the API summary. Now the security schema. So how we want to protect our API? We want to go with basic auth, we want to go with OAuth 1.0, 2.0, like that. That schema we can select here. For now, we'll just skip that. Okay. Now the main part, right? The resources. Here in the left hand side, you can see when I click on the plus icon, it gives me a new screen where I can enter the name of my resources. So first we'll just talk about customer API, and then it's a create customer, right? So I have selected a post method here. The name what I'm giving here, create customer. And how I want to secure my API. If we would have added a secure schema, right, so that we could select from here. Okay, so now as you can see on the right hand side, we have created a resource, we have created a method, the operation. Okay, now the missing parts is the request body and response body. Sorry. So when you go to request body, right, here again you can click on add body. You can tell in which uh, format you need your request, right? It's a application JSON. I'm selecting whether it's object, string, number, that also you can select. And when you click on this details page here, you can add a properties. So Ketan, you see that properties, right, which Vikas added via traits, sorry, types, right? So
Right.
that I'm directly going to create here only. So if you see here, as soon as I add property, here the property section gets added, right? You can see here.
Okay.
So I'll just move this to types also later, but just for
Mm-hmm.
your understanding, right? How it looks like I'm showing here.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So in the property, I can see I need a name. Okay, it's a string value, it's a required. And if you want to select any other restrictions, right? What kind of pattern should follow your name? You can give example like Venkatesh. Okay, you want any minimum or maximum let criteria, that also you can give here. Then we can say we should have address. Okay, then the phone number, mobile number, that would be sorry, that would be a number. Okay, so once I'm good, right? So this is the example got inherited from this one. Okay, whatever traits and we have created.
Mm-hmm.
Just copy this for reference.
I think this seems to be easy way to design rather than going with manual
Yeah,
inputs.
yeah, it's a simple way when we initially start with this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we usually go with the inline mode. There we have more flexibility. You'll get to know when you use this more frequently, right?
Okay.
So most of us will prefer the inline mode only. But this is a simple way because we are getting all the options and suggestion what we have to do. In inline mode also you'll get a suggestion, okay? So when we create a get method, right, I'll show you how we can create easily in inline mode also. Okay.
Okay.
So now that's what we need for a get one. Okay. So now how the response will look like. Okay. So it's a create method. So I'm selecting a status code as a 201. Then in the body, again it's object, right? And here, sorry, I'll not create any schema here. Okay. I'll just directly give the example. So you'll understand the difference now. Okay, so if you see here, right, here the value message customer record created. So directly examples got created, but here we have added a property, right? So we can give combination of both property as well as example. When you give a property, then we are restricting our API to expect this structure in certain format. I cannot pass name in the number. It has to be string always. I cannot pass mobile number in the string. It has to be integer only, a number only. Okay. So like that we need it. Okay. So that's about it. Yeah, so let's go back to summary. So now what I'll do, right, I'll just click on edit RAML. It will go to our inline mode. When I say yes, send me to the text, right? Text editor. So this is how it looks like. We have a post method. So now the traits part, right? And the type one. In the type, when you click enter, right, here we will get options. So I'll just say cust response type. There I will just define these things, properties, what I have added here. And that cust type, I would just refer like this. So you understood, right? How we are referring that now here.
Yeah, yeah. Now it's understood.
Now, once it's done, right? So if you observe, right, I'm clicking on the control and space. So I'm getting a suggestions here. Okay. It will give me all the suggestion what I look like. So I'm looking for an example now, right? And in the example, I'll just copy this one, what I have added. Now I have a type as well as example here. Okay. So the secure is not needed at this moment. I'll delete it. This true is okay. And here I'll just remove this for simplicity and I'll add created. Okay. So when I save this and I go to post, we'll see this example what we have added. We'll see data type of each attribute within that example. We'll see a response as well. Okay. And as Vikas mentioned, you can try this out. You will get a mock service, right? And with that mock service, you can make a call and try it. And if you pass any invalid data, right, you will get an error. Okay. So the mock response, mock URL is not generated. That's why I'm getting error, but that's fine. So yeah, so this is one of the method we have created using the UI mode. Now let's create the method using a inline. So apart from post, we need a get method, right? So as you can see here down, I'm getting a suggestions. Okay, what I need. Okay, what I need here. I'm getting all that suggestion. So I don't have to define any query parameter because I need all customers. So it's just a simple get method. Okay, then you can just give a kind of a description. What is this method about? Get all customers. Okay. After that, again just do control space, you will get another suggestion. We don't have any body in method get method, right? So I just need a response. In the response, what status code you need? I need 200. Okay, what is the thing you are looking? A response header, response body. It's a response body we are looking. Then after that, how the response structure would look like? It should be in JSON format, right? And then again, in the example, you can add either you can add a type, you can add an example. So in example, again, you can add a response here. Okay. customer name should be name only, sorry. So whatever attribute we have added while creating, right, we'll be adding the same thing there. Let me just copy. On top of that, we also need a customer ID. So this customer ID should be auto-generated field. Okay. So when we implement the system API, that time we will see, because this ID is very important field for us. Okay. So now we can see here we have designed two APIs. Okay. So now design part is done. We need a feedback from our stakeholders, right? We need feedback from our POs, we need feedback from our consumers, right? So this is one of the phase in design life cycle, right? The other is the feedback one. So what we have to do, you just have to click on publish and publish this particular RAML to exchange. It's loading. So basically it takes some time to push this RAML on the exchange. So yeah, so we can see this RAML on the exchange. Give it a few seconds. Okay, so this is the RAML we have published in the exchange. You will see all different attribute, the name of the RAML. You can add your own documentation by editing the document. Then this is the summary of our API, what all endpoints we have, how the API look like. Okay. Then you can publish this. If the consumer and product owner has access, you can directly share this link. Okay. Or if your company or your organization allowed to publish this exchange, is this specific specification on your public exchange, then you can just post this to a public exchange. But it's again the individual organization policies whether we are allowed to push it on public exchange or not. So that you need to check with your organization only. But yeah, this is how the consumer will look your RAML specification. They can start working on their development without waiting for us, because they have mocking service. They can directly come and test the request response. They can verify how your request look like. So Vikas talked about the blueprint, right? So this is the contract what we are sharing with our consumer, that our API will look like this. Okay, this is what we are sharing with the consumer. So yeah, that's pretty much about the design part. Okay, now let's jump on the implementation part. Okay, I know we don't have much time, so I'll quickly cover that. So there are two ways you can start implementation. First, you can download the RAML as a zip file. Okay. Other, when you create a project, there itself there is an option that you can take a RAML from the exchange. Okay. In my local studio, somehow it's not working, taking the RAML from the exchange. So if you see here, there are three options, right? Take a RAML from the exchange. When you say import a published API, here you will get options from exchange or Maven. Okay. Or you can directly take it from design center, but I'm going for a local RAML, okay, which I have downloaded. So now we have completed the design phase and we are moving into the implementation phase, guys. Just try to understand how we are switching the phases, right? The API lifecycle management phases. So now I have added a RAML. Let's give the name of our API. Okay, so you have to make sure you're checking the scaffold flows option. Okay, when this is checked, then only Anypoint Studio by default create a scaffold folder. Okay, we'll see how it looks like. Okay, when I click on finish, it will take some time. It will browse through the RAML. It will create a scaffold folder where we could get a basic implementation of our API. Will not get any business logic added, but a basic implementation where we could see the HTTP listener is already configured, API get router is already configured, out of the box exception handling is already done. Okay, Then the resources is already created with the mock response, what we have configured in our RAML, right? So that all information we are seeing. So as I said, right, we will be getting a customer API main. So this is our entry point to the application. We have API kit router. Okay. Then the customer API console. Through console, we will get the same view what we saw on the exchange, right? So usually in the production, will not go with the console. We will delete it. We'll have this till development phase only. Okay, and then we got the the get and post method created here with the response what we have configured in the RAML. Okay, so now it's developer responsibility to add a implementation part to this. Okay, so this is one of the part in the implementation phase. So once you imported a RAML, you'll just import in the studio and scaffold the folder. So you will get a basic level of implementation. And the structure, the application structure, right? We will be having a main a mule folder. It would be under SRC main resources. In the main folder, we will be having mule resources. Under resources, we'll be keeping all our RAMLs, our properties, our certificates related stuff. Okay, and all our implementation related configuration file will be available under mule. If there are any Java code, we will be keeping that in this section. And if we are planning to create any minute test case, that go to minute folder. And under resources, whatever resources we need for a testing purpose, right? Minute testing, that should go to the resource. We have to make sure we are putting that into a test resources only, because when we build the jar at the end, when we deploy our code to the jar, right? And when we build a jar, whatever resources or whatever code present under minute and under test folder, right? That won't be available in the package at the end. Okay, so make sure whatever resources you need for a unit testing, you should keep it under resources and minute only. Okay, guys, clear so far? Any questions so far?
How this API kit router came in this?
Yeah, so as I said, right, when you import the RAML, you'll get one option. So I'll show you again. When you create a new mule project, right, here you will import a RAML. Okay, so let me just move to that step. And as soon as you import your RAML, right, here we will get one option. Scaffold flows from this API specification. So whatever flow we have created in that API specification, right? So by default, any point will, so when we select this particular option, scaffold flow, right? So by default, any point will make sure that it will create a main flow with the API kit router and listener. It will create a console and it will create a private flows for all the resources present in your RAML with the mocked response. Okay. So because of this particular option, we could see by default the base code available in our X customer API. Yeah, you understood, right? Why it
Yeah.
came. Okay, cool.
Um, I have
No,
a
but,
question.
but it scaffold, I mean, added the API kit router, but why is it used for? I mean, why we need
So why we
API?
need it? Okay, okay. So now there are two flows we have, post and get. Okay, this is a private flow. In our previous session, we talked about private flow, right? Private flow means we will have only processing and exception handling. Okay, so this is a flow actually, but source is not present. That's why we are calling a private flow. Now let's say we have around 10 resources. Okay, you need to create a listener for all that 10 resources. That's first point, because I need to have HTTP listener here. I need to have HTTP listener here. I need to configure different endpoint for each HTTP listener. That's the first point. Second point, we have added some types when we created our RAML, right? We did some kind of a validation, right? In the post create customer method, what we said that these are the required fields. If you don't pass this required fields, we should not entertain your request. And if the API kit router not present here, so we have to do all this kind of validation manually. We have to, on each resource level, we have to add our own validation logic where we will be checking whether this particular name field is coming or not, address field is coming or not, or number field is coming or not. So second thing is the request and the incoming attribute level validation. Okay. Now third thing, the route part, right? As I said, we will be creating different listener for this. Now, when you go with the API kit router, so router will be taken in the API kit router. You don't have to worry, okay, how the calls get routed to get customer, post customer. So API kit router will identify your method, your resources, and based on that, it will route your request to an appropriate private flow. Then the second point, the validation. All the incoming request or your query parameter or attribute level validation will be done on the API kit router only. Okay, so everything will be taken care here only so that you don't have to worry about the validations. Once you have created a design and you have added all your data type, that's it. You don't have to worry on the validation on the code level. API kit router will take care of that. Understood? Understood, right? You're clear,
Yeah,
right?
understood.
Okay, cool. Sure. I was
Mm,
planning to, yeah, yeah. Someone has a questions?
yeah. So you talk about this folder structures, right? Is it static? That static in the sense, can we have our own folders
No,
or
you can have own folders within this mule. Okay. So
okay?
see, if you want to create, see, we follow center standards. Okay.
Correct.
So we should have all our configuration under global.xml. When I say configuration, we create a connector
Correct.
configuration. Okay, so that should go under global XML. Then we have a implementation. So here usually in the private flow, it's kind of a interface. We would treat this particular file as an interface. So implementation will usually not have here. Okay, for
Okay.
implementation within mule folder we'll create an implementation folder, and inside that we have our individual implementation XML file. So what I'm trying to say here, right? Within the folder, you can create a folders. Like you need to create a folders, right? Under Mule, you can have any number of folders.
Mhm.
There is no issue. But if you're creating outside of a main, so that won't be referred in your code. Okay.
So let's say we have certificates, we have client certificates, we have our own certificates. That if we want to handle that, is there any particular folder we need to
Yeah.
maintain all these, or we can create our own?
Under resources, you can create your certificate folders, and inside that you can keep that. Under resources, see whatever supporting resources required to make your application in the running state,
Mhm.
that resources should come under resource folder.
Let it be any resource, either
Yeah,
certificates or a
yeah,
jar file or anything.
yeah,
Okay.
anything public key, private key, certificate. No, not jar file. Huh? Jar file should go as a dependency. But I'm talking about the resources directly impacted with your application, like your certificate, as I said,
Mhm.
private key, public key, SSH key, property files, RAML, that should go under resources, or any lookup files that should go under resources.
Okay. Okay.
Clear, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to show you how to deploy this on the cloud up. So let's quickly cover that because that you will be needing. So what you have to do, right? Just go here and then see the API is secure, and adding the auto discovery. Will keep that in the next session. Okay, we'll discuss that in detail in next session. But we need to cover our assignments also, right? So I'll just show you how to deploy this application to Cloud Up. So there are a few ways you can deploy the application directly going to the runtime manager, and from there, and from Studio also you can do. You just have to right click on your application when it's ready. Then here you will find Anypoint platform, and there you click deploy to Cloud Up. Okay, so our is the normal Anypoint platform, right? It's not a EU region, so we don't have to do any configuration. We can go with the same Anypoint platform.com. Enter your user ID and password. Sign in. So once you are sign in, right, just close the pop up, because sometimes I'm facing some glitch. Okay, I'm not directly getting option to deploy application. So once you have signed in, right, let me just show you. Once you sign in, there are some glitches. Okay, the screen is repeating, just loading for me. Okay, like this, I'm not directly getting the deployment option, I'm getting the runtime application homepage. Okay, so once you logged in, just close that and again go to the Anypoint platform and click on deploy to cloud hub. So now you will go to a page where it will ask you to select an environment. Okay, for me it will not show because I have already selected an environment sandbox. Okay, so I already put me on sandbox, but you have to select on sandbox. Now you have to give the application. So whenever you give the application, right, make sure you are adding some you are appending some name. Let's say I'm creating application, right, Venkatesh Jujarao and today's date, because we are using a shared trial version, right, and it's a shared cloud we are using. So you have to give unique application, and all our tutorial is based on Cloud Hub 0. So make sure you are selecting Cloud Hub, not Cloud Hub 2.0. Make sure you select a Cloud Hub, and then in the properties section you need to add this two keys. I'll explain the use case of that two keys, why it's needed, but you need to add these two keys. I'll just pin that keys on the Skype. So first one is the client ID and second one is the client secret. Okay. And if you want to take a reference, you can just go to sandbox and see my application. Okay. Once you have added the keys, or the keys is not required because we are not using any auto discovery, right? So you skip this part completely. Once you are here, just deploy the application. And so once the application is deployed, right, you just have to go to runtime manager. When you go to runtime manager and select your sandbox environment, so you see your application is deployed here. So what you have to do, we'll talk about the shared balancer, this URL in a bit. Okay, so what you have to do, just capture this particular URL and give the resources. So make sure you are deploying on HTTP only. So default configuration, you give this URL. So with this, you can confirm you have deployed your application successfully. Okay. And another key, what you need to make sure that when we talked about MuleSoft architecture, right, we'll discuss about this. So whenever you are deploying on the shared load balancer, right, so you have to make sure you are giving the property like this one, 8081, not sorry, HTTP. You're giving protocol should be HTTP, don't touch host, and port should be HTTP.port. Okay, click OK. The reason behind this HTTP port, I'll just quickly explain. I think it's already 11:30. I'll just quickly explain the architecture behind the port. Okay, why we need that. So in the trial version, we use a shared load balancer. Okay, Cloud Up shared load balancer. So when we use a Cloud Up shared load balancer, if we look at the URL, okay, so if you look at the URL, if you see this particular URL, right? So this URL is made of our application name. Okay, this is our application name, the region where we have deployed our application. So when you select the deployment mode, there will get option of the region also. When you try it out, right, just explore all the option around it, and the domain. So the shared load balancer is made of this structure: application, region, and domain. And when we see this particular thing, right, when we make a call to this particular shared load balancer, internally it will make a call to a public IP address of your mule worker. So when we deploy our application, mule worker will generate an internal URL. So that would be mule-worker. Okay, so mule hyphen worker is the static key. So our internal URL will look like this, mule hyphen worker. Okay, and then whatever application name we are getting, that's it. Okay, so with this URL, we are directly calling our internal Cloud Hub URL. But that is taken care by another thing, the HTTP one I told you, right? I'll explain about the HTTP. So internally, when we use a HTTP protocol, right, we are making call to a shared load balancer on either 80 when we are using HTTP protocol, we are calling the shared load balancer on 80 port. And if we are using HTTP S protocol, we are calling shared load balancer on HTTP post. And when shared load balancer communicate to a Cloud Hub worker URL, so if it's a HTTP protocol, that HTTP protocol get resolved to 8081 port. Okay, so that's why this is a reserved port which is required when we deploy to a shared load balancer in the trial account, basically when we don't have any premium account, right? So we have to make sure we are giving the properties as a HTTP port. Okay, so about this load balancer and all we'll discuss in detail in our next session, but these are some links. Just go through these links. In the first links in the first link you will understand what is control plane and runtime plane. We will not discuss that, but just go through this so you'll get idea what all capabilities of Anypoint platform goes in control plane and what all in the runtime plane. Then understand the cloud hub architecture, then the cloud hub networking guide. So we saw this, how the load balancer work. The dedicated load balancer you don't have to refer at this moment. Okay, so I'll just share these links in our chat again. So that's about it. So shall we discuss on the assignment part, because I think that's what I wanted
Mm,
to cover.
just one thing.
Yeah,
What if we define 8081 port directly, because we know we have hosted on HTTP.
so sometimes when you define the port directly and when you don't give the HTTP port, right, you will get 500 504 bad gateway. So if I have to show you that, right? So now I remove this, and if I remove this, so you might see error like this, and here they will give these suggestions. Ensure that you have entered HTTP port for port if it's a HTTP protocol, if HTTPS like this. Okay, so you'll see exactly this page. Okay, Ketan?
But no means you have given HTTP as that's why, but we know that we have defined or designed it over HTTP.
Mhm.
So
So
I'm
what
not
is
getting why we are putting that HTTP dot port as a configuration.
so this structure what I have given shown you, right? This structure. So we are making a call to a Cloud Hub shared load balancer. You know about load balancer, right?
Right.
So from that load balancer, we are routing request to a multiple application. Okay, so
Mm,
how the load balancer works, right? It will take an input request, and based on the input request, it will decide to which application the request get routed, right?
okay.
The application name we are identifying based on the structure what I have explained,
Mm-hmm.
right? So now internally, when the internal worker URL address get resolved, if it's a
Mm-hmm.
HTTP protocol, the load balancer has to make a call to 8081 only, because we are using a shared load balancer and we cannot define our own firewall rules there. Okay, if it would
Okay.
have a dedicated load balancer, you can choose whatever port you want. Okay, but
Okay.
on shared load balancer, it's a mandatory from MuleSoft side only.
Okay.
8081 has to be selected, and instead of directly putting 8081, MuleSoft is recommended to put http.port, a reserved property in a
Mm-hmm.
listener,
Okay.
so that this resolution will happen smoothly.
Okay. Okay. I mean, it's recommended from MuleSoft. Okay.
Yeah, it's a best practice, if I
Okay.
would
Okay.
say,
Got it.
Ketan.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it.
It's the best practice. Okay. Okay, fine. Yeah. So thank you, Venkatesh, for covering this demo. So yeah, so let's spend few minutes and make them understand the assignment as well for the remaining methods, Venkatesh.
Sure. So guys, we have saw about the post and get. So what we want you to do, right? Implement the get customer ID, put customer, that is update customer by ID, delete customer by ID. Okay. So all this thing should be using a URI parameter. Okay, so Vikas explained about difference between URI and query parameter, right? So we are going to use a URI parameter here. So based on your understanding, just design the RAML, import into a studio, implement with the kit router, scaffold folder, and try to deploy it on Cloud Hub and access the console and see how it looks like. Okay, so that's the assignment for this week. Okay, guys, clear?
Okay, only get by ID.
Sorry?
One operation, right?
Yeah, no,
Get by
no,
ID.
no,
Or
Ketan, hold a second. So Venkatesh will share this diagram, okay, over
Mhm.
the Telegram channel, and then you can see. So it's not get, it's like it's get is there, put is there, right, and delete is there. Three are there
Correct.
using the URI param, okay. So Venkatesh will share these details over the Telegram channel,
Okay.
okay.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, and Venkatesh, about the invitation to join the Anyone platform, right?
yes,
So
so
please
guys,
share that API on the Telegram channel, yeah.
so we have created one postman collection. Okay. So the purpose of this collection to get you invited on the trial account which we have created. Okay. So what you have to do, just import this postman collection and update your email ID here. We can try it out any one of the email ID now. Can you ping? Anyone? Can you ping your email ID? We'll just try one email ID here. Okay, let's try Ketan as well as now. So it is secured with the client enforcement. So you will find all the details here. You just have to replace the email ID and hit the API. Okay. And you will receive 204 status code. And Ketan, can you confirm if you have received the email?
Yeah, 1 minute.
Meanwhile, I'll add Shubhas also. This is just for internal purpose, okay? Internally, I'm just exposing the Cloud Hub URL only. So sometimes I'm getting 500 error due to some internal issues. So if someone is unable to get invited with this Postman collection, just ping me over a Skype or over a Telegram. I'll get them added. But most of the time it will work. Okay, I'm using some cache, and when we make a call to MuleSoft API, it uses some cookies. Okay, if I can show you the Postman collection. So when I make a call to this particular invite user call, MuleSoft by default adds some cookies to it. Okay, when I try to log in it, MuleSoft will by default add a cookies and we'll get that error and we need to clear that cookies. Okay, that's why we'll get a error. So you simply go ahead and clear the cookies from here. But if you still face any issue, just ping me or Vikas and we'll add your email ID. Okay, just ping your email ID to me and Vikas over Skype and we'll get it added. Okay, so Ketan, can you confirm if you have received the email?
Yeah, I received the email and
Okay,
a
so just
link to join it.
enter this and you will be in. And I have already provided the appropriate access in the invite itself. So you would be able to access the sandbox environment.
Okay.
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 So this mail you have sent, I mean, how we are validating? We have to access the Cloud Hub.
What is your question?
Um, Earlier you were showing that we have to put in some name and after HTTPS we have to put in some name, then Cloud Hub URL, then port number. What
No,
is
no,
that?
no. That just I have explained for your understanding. Okay, you don't have to do that all. So once you deployed your application, right?
Hmm.
Once you deployed your application, there itself you'll get the URL of your app. Let me just go there. You're able to see my screen?
Yes.
So I have deployed this register application, right? So here
Mhm.
itself, in the settings, you will see your shared load balancer URL. You don't have to do anything. You just have to add your resources after this. Okay,
Okay.
API slash whatever resource you have. Okay, make sure you are adding API because by default, when you create a flows through RAML, right? The base URL, you will see the API. Okay, so you need to make sure you are adding API, and this would be the URL. After API would be your base URL, and then the resources. Okay,
Mhm.
okay, cool then. Yeah, I think that's all from my end. Yeah, if
Yep.
anyone has any questions, any further question, guys? I think that's all,
Okay.
Vikas. Then to you.
Yep. Thank you so much, Venkatesh.
Thank
So,
you.
yep, we'll be looking forward to your responses. Okay, which will be uploaded to that Anypoint platform link which provided by Venkatesh. And do make sure to follow us on YouTube, medium.com, and LinkedIn. Okay, and if your friends also want to join these sessions, you can refer them as well. Okay, they can send an email to your integration buddy at outlook.com and we'll get them added to the Telegram channel. Okay, guys, thank you so much for your time and have a good day ahead. Thank you. See you next week.
Sure.
Thank you.
Bye.